Last week in Michigan politics, as summer approaches and the temperatures get even hotter here in West Michigan, so does the race for the White House. We have the latest on national efforts in this key swing state. Plus, a major development in the state attorney general's case aimed at shutting down a controversial oil and natural gas pipeline running through the Straits of Mackinac. What a federal appeals court decided and how that could impact the case. And Taylor Swift in the Michigan State Capitol? Well, not physically, but the pop star's influence is now reaching into the halls of government and even the legislation of the very state she visited just last year. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on Your Side Rundown. With the first presidential debate next week and former President Trump's criminal convictions still sending shockwaves throughout the race for the White House, efforts in battleground states, including ours, continue to ramp up. With the Biden campaign putting out a new ad in the state and Trump traveling to Detroit this past week, ABC's Mary Bruce has a look at the state of the race.
With the first presidential debate a little more than a week away, the Biden campaign tonight is putting Donald Trump's criminal conviction front and center.
This election is between a convicted criminal who's only out for himself and a president who's fighting for your family.
The president's campaign running that new ad in every key battleground state. On the trail, Trump is using his criminal trial to rally his own base.
All of their persecution of me and others is only happening because I'm running for president and leading very big in the polls.
Trump speaking at an event hosted by far-right activist Charlie Kirk, who's been criticized for his anti-immigrant and racist comments. He recently argued Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy was a myth. Earlier in the day, Trump appeared at a black church in Detroit, trying to court voters where polls show he's making inroads.
Joe Biden has done nothing for you except talk. It's only talk.
Trump often boasts that during his administration, unemployment among black Americans hit a record low, 5.3%. What he doesn't mention, it dropped even lower under Biden to 4.8% last August. At a fundraiser with Biden in California, former President Barack Obama urging voters not to be fooled by Trump.
Part of what has happened over the last several years is we've normalized behavior that used to be disqualifying.
The president is planning to head to Camp David later this week to hunker down for debate prep. His former chief of staff, Ron Klain, will be leading those sessions, while Trump, on the other hand, as of now, has no plans to do any formal debate prep. Instead, we're told he's bouncing ideas off of friends and advisors, and we are now learning a bit more about the rules for this debate. We now know that the candidates' mics will, in fact, only be turned on when it is their turn to speak. Mary Bruce, ABC News, the White House.
A former Republican candidate for Michigan Attorney General who was charged in connection to an alleged effort to illegally access and tamper with voting machines announced he is running for a seat on Michigan's highest court. Matt DePerno announced his candidacy on X last week. DePerno is running against two opponents in the Republican primary for a partial term seat on the court. In his announcement on X, DePerno wrote in part, quote, "It is clear that the Michigan Supreme Court needs members that are committed to following the Constitution and rule of law. Activists, judges, prosecutors, and attorney generals are using their power to prosecute their political enemies. This has to stop, and that is why I am running for Supreme Court." The candidate lost the race for Attorney General to Dana Nessel by nearly 9 points in the 2022 election. DePerno was later arraigned and was named as a prime instigator in the case that alleges 5 vote tabulators were allegedly taken and tested after the 2020 election. The case against DePerno was brought by a special prosecutor after Nessel's office cited a conflict of interest, given she had run against him. DePerno's case has not gone to trial, and he has denied any wrongdoing. And on the east side of the state, the Republican National Committee on Friday launched an effort in swing states like ours to organize so-called election integrity watchdogs. In Bloomfield Hills, RNC Chair Michael Whatley, alongside RNC co-chair Laura Trump, announced plans to mobilize thousands of polling place monitors, workers, and attorneys ahead of the presidential election. The RNC said this new effort focuses on helping voters have faith in the electoral process and stopping, quote, Democrat attempts to circumvent the rules. The National Party hopes to organize a historic number of volunteers for November.
We have pledged 100,000 people, volunteers across this country, to make sure that we have transparency and fairness in our elections. We want people feeling like when they go out and vote, their vote counts and their vote matters.
According to the Associated Press, a spokesperson for the Democratic National Committee called these tactics, quote, baseless attacks on our democracy. The RNC chair says that the committee plans to place election integrity directors in 15 states, including battleground states. A Michigan Court of Claims has set the bar for the verification of signatures on absentee ballots a little higher after its latest ruling. The lawsuit, brought against Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson by the Republican National Committee, Michigan Republican Party, and others, challenged the verification process of signatures on absentee ballots. The court issued a split ruling in the case, which sought to remove a presumption of validity of voter signatures on absentee ballot applications and submissions, and contest further guidance provided to local election officials to assist in the signature verification process. The Court of Claims ruled that it is against the state constitution to assume the validity of a signature, but additional guidance on how to verify signatures sent to local election officials was within the law. This ruling will require election officials to be slightly more stringent in the signature verification process. And in a saga that spanned several years now, the state attorney general was successful this week in getting a key case involving Enbridge's controversial Line 5 pipeline through the states of Mackinac moved back to state court. A federal appeals court ruling Monday that AG Dana Nessel's case to shut down Line 5 belongs in state court. It's seen as a win for Nessel's office, who was able to get a state court to order Line 5 be temporarily shut down, but that was before Enbridge filed to have the case removed to federal court. The AG's office celebrating the ruling and saying that the state, quote, has an obligation and imperative to protect the Great Lakes from the threat of pollution, especially the devastating catastrophe a potential Line 5 rupture would wreak upon all of Michigan. A spokesperson for Enbridge telling the Associated Press, however, that they are disappointed in the case being moved, saying that Line 5 is regulated under federal law and an international treaty. The spokesperson also telling the AP a ruling in another federal lawsuit should resolve the state case, and that efforts are being made to, quote, make a safe pipeline safer. And for anyone who may have found out how to use an online bot or an extra email address to get more tickets than you were allowed for that certain special event, in the words of Taylor Swift, you should have said no and you should have gone home. At least that's what some state lawmakers have signaled as they voted to advance a pair of bills aimed at cracking down on exorbitant ticket purchasing. Dubbed by some as the Taylor Swift bills, given ticket issues last year that plagued the superstar's career-encompassing Eras tour, these two bills are aimed at stopping people from creating and using bots to purchase more tickets than is the limit for any given entertainment event. These bots, some say, can drive up ticket prices by draining the number of tickets available for other event goers. Purchasing in excess of the ticket limit by using multiple email addresses, internet protocol addresses, or purchaser accounts would also be banned. The bills would also give the Attorney General the power to bring action against those who do so, with a civil fine of up to $5,000 for each ticket bought in violation of these rules. The bills also are now on to the full State House for a vote. And also at the state capitol, new legislation aimed at ensuring that all public high school students have access to computer science classes has passed the State House. The bill, introduced by Democratic Representative Carol Glanville of Walker, would require computer science courses to be taught in all public high schools across the state. Starting with the 2027-2028 school year, public high schools would need to offer at least one of these courses. Representative Glanville calls the legislation a significant step forward.
Computer science is a fundamental skill necessary for today's students to succeed. It is not only relevant for almost every career path, from skilled labor to advanced medical research and development, but also it equips students with the critical thinking skills they need for future success.
The bill passed the House with largely bipartisan support, and now it will need to pass the Senate before it is sent to the governor's desk. And coming up, after major opioid settlements resulted in billions of dollars being distributed to state and local governments, Kent County is one step closer to deciding how it will spend its share of the money. We have the latest on what's being planned next. And an update now on Kent County's plan for how to spend its portion of the money coming from national opioid settlements that have totaled billions of dollars. The county is one vote closer to spending millions of dollars awarded to them as part of those settlements. A committee approved the county's spending plan to go to the next level after delays from their original timeline. 13 on Your Side's Julie Koharic has been following this for months and brings us the latest.
Questions or comments regarding this item?
This much money
$4,591,324
is bound to come with some questions.
Providing education to those people that are most likely to succumb.
This week, the Board of Commissioners got answers about a plan years in the making.
A couple other parts.
After months of delays.
Yes. All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes.
This approval from the Finance and Fiscal Resources Committee was delayed from its original date in May. The county told 13 on Your Side the task force got a chance to get input from the Lakeshore regional entities.
They are over 7 counties.
That task force is led by Rachel Jantz.
And they were supportive of what was included in our plan.
Their plan remains unchanged after the LRE agreed. This vote, now Kent County's first major step towards seeing change.
Continuing to do the same is not acceptable, and I won't support anything that's the same thing that we've been doing.
Change that needs to be enough for commissioners like Michelle McLeod.
Black people are succumbing to, they're actually dying 3 times, at least I believe 3 times more from this than our white counterparts. And so it is important for us to really think about if the system was working right, I don't think that we would be where we are.
McLeod knows what this money could mean.
I guess this is really close to my heart, right, of having so many family members that have overdosed and passed away from this.
And Jantz is ready to be even more innovative in years 3, 4, and beyond.
Really glad that that came from the Board of Commissioners to look for those innovative solutions, because that gives us more leeway in the future to be looking toward other solutions for our community.
With 2 more meetings before final approval and years of planning ahead, the commissioners,
great to see this plan moving forward,
and the task force can agree.
We are eager to start spending, and
getting this money moving is the answer to start seeing change.
And this plan has to go through another committee on July 16th, but the new plan is to send it to the Board of Commissioners right after on July 18th. A campaign to persuade Kent County voters to approve a hotel tax on the August 6th ballot is now underway. Organizers say the lodging proposal would bring money into the community. The money will be used to fund major projects like a proposed amphitheater, soccer stadium, and a potential aquarium. A similar plan was used to help with Van Andel Arena and DeVos Place Convention Center. Organizers of the campaign say this will not only support large projects, but will be spread out.
It's that much more important to understand how critical it is to keep the amazing things that we have, like the symphony and some of these other sports programs, moving forward, but we're also then add the infrastructure for the future. We've had the Van Andel Arena Convention Center from the past, and that's there for us to enjoy. And if we didn't have that in this community, how different would downtown be? It's a very special place.
The lodging proposal for the hotel tax increase will be on the August 6th ballot here in Kent County. In Ottawa County, a newly elected member of the Ottawa County Commission says he's been terminated from his job with Michigan State University Extension. After he won his special election for the District 2 seat last month, Chris Kleinyan's attorney alleges MSU's Extension's decision to terminate him was based on political pressure. In a letter to colleagues that we received earlier this week, Kleinyan's wrote, quote, "MSU Extension ended my employment because it advised me that it did not believe I could continue working effectively with partners such as yourself while fulfilling the office of Ottawa County Commissioner, to which I was recently elected. This was the sole reason for my termination. There was no job performance issue, personal or professional impropriety, nor any other cause for MSU Extension's decision. In a letter to the Human Resources Director at MSU Extension, Kleinians' attorney Sarah Howard said that she believes the true motive is politics. In her letter, Howard wrote, quote, "We believe that the actual reason for this decision is that MSU Extension has bowed to political pressure from current Ottawa County Commissioners aligned with Ottawa Impact and Lucy Ebel, Mr. Kleinians' opponent in the recall election." Earlier, Howard alleges a district director had told Kleinians that MSU Extension was concerned about repercussions with its relationship with county officials. Howard then claims Kleinians learned County Commissioner Chair Joe Moss and Commissioner Miedema met with 2 Extension district directors and apparently alleged a concern over conflict of interest if Kleinians won the recall election. We reached out for a comment from both Moss and Miedema. Moss told us that this is a matter between Kleinians and MSU, and that Ottawa County is excited to continue working with MSU in the years to come, as they have for over 100 years. We also reached out to MSU Extension, but were told they cannot comment on personnel matters. Transgender athletes competing in women's sports has been a topic of controversy for years. Now, a new expansion to federal statute meant to prohibit discrimination on the basis of gender is renewing that discussion in our local area. Coming up, why some advocates are saying they oppose the expansion aimed at further protecting LGBTQ students, and why others believe a place must be made for those students to compete. The U.S. Surgeon General wants to put a warning label on social media platforms similar to the ones you may see on a box of cigarettes. In the New York Times over the weekend, Dr. Vivek Murthy says the label would state social media is associated with significant health harms for kids and teenagers. Here in our area, a clinician at Pine Rest Christian Mental Health Services says a label is a good step, but more needs to be done.
I think it'd be really important from that sort of warning to come out with more interventions, more supports, more clear guidance for parents.
While social media isn't the only factor, Dr. Heidi Rawlings says it's a big one. She says she is seeing more depression and increased risk of suicide among young people. Since COVID, Dr. Rawlings says they've been wondering if social media has a role in these increases.
Sometimes myself and other clinicians I work with will ask youth if social media is playing a role or if it contributed. And we are noticing that sometimes those are connected. For example, they may see distressing content online.
Dr. Rawlings recommends parents approach the topic with a curious and non-judgmental approach. She says, ask your child what type of sites they visit and if anything is making them feel uncomfortable. She also recommends monitoring their time spent online. Pine Rest also has more resources on this topic. You can find that by clicking on this story at 13onyourside.com. We should also mention the Surgeon General's recommendation is only just a recommendation at this point. No action has been taken by Congress. And former U.S. Secretary of Education and West Michigan native Betsy DeVos is opposed to the Biden administration's expansion of Title IX. That prohibits sexual discrimination in sports and education, and the expansion is aimed at giving more protection to the LGBTQ+ community. DeVos was joined by several former female student athletes at a news conference this week. 13 on Your Side's Julia Gorman heard from those speakers and the Grand Rapids Pride Center to bring us the full story.
The ongoing controversy of the Biden administration's expansion of Title IX includes right here in West Michigan.
And we're not going to turn back the clock.
The policy expands Title IX civil rights protections to LGBTQ+ students, expands the definition of sexual harassment at schools, and adds safeguards for victims. Former U.S. Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos spoke out against the expansion alongside former female student athletes. The change is set to take hold in August.
There should be no question about what the law means. But the Biden regulation would again put women in a position to be discriminated against in favor of biological men. This cannot be allowed.
Joining DeVos, former Connecticut student athlete Selena Soule as a part of the Take Back Title IX bus tour.
During my junior year in 2019, I lost out on qualifying for the New England Indoor Track and Field Regional Meet by just 2 spots, with the top 2 spots being taken by male athletes.
Fellow former student athlete and ambassador for the Independent Women's Voice, Paula Scanlon.
In September of 2021, Leah Thomas, formerly Will Thomas, began participating as a member of my women's swim team at the University of Pennsylvania. While on the men's team, Thomas had personal best times in every freestyle event that were faster than women's world records.
13 on Your Side reached out to the Grand Rapids Pride Center about the issue. Executive Director Jazz McKinney sent us a long statement. It said in part, quote, "While the protection of women's sports is a valid concern, it is crucial to recognize that framing this issue as a matter of excluding transgender athletes is both misguided and harmful. Firstly, it is important to dispel the myth that transgender athletes pose a threat to women's sports." The statement goes on to say, quote, "Using Title IX to exclude transgender athletes contradicts the very essence of this law, which is about providing equal opportunities for all students, regardless of gender identity."
And this policy expansion is facing legal challenges as of earlier this week. You can read the full statement from the Pride Center on our website, 13onyourside.com. And after the break, one congressional candidate here in Michigan is drawing heat for a video in which he was seemingly being endorsed by Martin Luther King Jr. We have the story from the east side of the state next. A Republican candidate for Michigan's 8th congressional district is being criticized for an AI-generated social media post. It sounds like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but it's actually a deep fake. Anthony Hudson of Grand Blanc is named in the video and says the post was created by a volunteer without his knowledge. David Sackrider from our Flynn affiliate has the story.
Yes, it is me, Martin Luther King. I came back from the dead to say something.
That something? An endorsement for 8th District Republican congressional candidate Anthony Hudson. The TikTok, which went viral over the weekend, runs just 24 seconds long and features little more than that.
Okay, now I am going back to where I came from. Goodbye.
Democrats calling the video bizarre and tasteless, including another candidate for the same seat, State Senator Kristen McDonald-Rivet, who wrote on X, quote, "The GOP primary in MI08 has gone completely down the MAGA rabbit hole. This is absolutely disgusting, and the Republicans in our race should stand up and say so," end quote. Neither Paul Young or Mary Draves, who are running against Hudson for the Republican nomination, have released any statements to this point. Meanwhile, Hudson responded by apologizing, writing on X that he released the volunteer and, quote, "would have never approved such a stupid and disrespectful video." He also writes that the use of his voice,
"My name is Anthony Hudson, and I approve this message,"
was done without his knowledge. But then 5 hours later, Hudson walked the statement back, writing, quote, "I decided to not only keep my campaign staffer, but also give him a raise, as I believe MLK would be disgusted at the complete suffering of Flint, Michigan residents under the current administration's watch," end quote.
And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. We'll see you next week.